if you're setting out to do a thriller, and you can evoke in the minds of the audience, the strength of the thrills, or the strength of the drive of the thriller, by showing less than more, then that's the best way of doing it.
Ridley always seemed to come up with things that would really frighten you, the character, and I never seemed to run out of things to become afraid about, because after you've been working on the set a long time, the set begins, as soon as you walk into it, you're already emotionally prepared, for something to happen.
One of the things that we really wanted to do was keep the characters very naturalistic. We felt that had really never been done in science fiction before. To give it a feeling that it was a place where people worked, that these guys were workmen, truck drivers in space, these guys, and all of the people, and arguing among themselves and about money and things like that, and keep it very normal in very bizarre, fantastic settings, but which would be treated by the people as we would treat this room.
What's important is what aspects of it Ridley would get across cinematically. That was what I was interested in, constantly looking through the camera to see how effective it looked there. The only frightening thing really are the special effects in terms of what difficulty John Hurt had in the picture. That was the most intense for me, and I think for all of us.
We bought it about 8 months, I think, before Star Wars came out. And as we were working on it, the buzz started on Star Wars. And of course, when Star Wars came out, just the idea that science fiction had broken through in such a huge way, I think, paved the way for us.
Yeah, the two guys who originally wrote the screenplay were Dan O'Bannon and Ron Shusett. I read the screenplay, and I was absolutely knocked out by the screenplay, by the simplicity of it. The writers who rewrote the O'Bannon-Shusett thing were David Garler and Walter Hill. For instance, they added certain elements, like originally it was 7 people on board, and they brought in the element of 2 women. And I like the idea of women functioning under those circumstances with the same degree of strength as men.
I've never been afraid of anything that wasn't human, and the alien is something my character doesn't know what it is, even. I don't know enough about it to know how to be afraid of it, I don't know really how it works or what motivates it. I can't make any assumptions about it. So it's really the terror of the unknown that to me was the way I plugged into it, something that's after you, and you can't reason with it.
I worked with Dan O'Bannon in the beginning, and he wrote the story, and I'm industrial designer and painter also from Switzerland, and I had to design this beast in the way he could use it for the film.
And I think in this instance, it is relentless, the film, I think. And it doesn't let the audience off the hook too many times. I think it's a combination of elements of the sound. I think the sound is very important, you see, in the film. And I think the sound evokes certain fears in the audience, and therefore I think they've seen, and they think they've heard, and they think they've witnessed. I think it's the feeling, it's the undercurrent in the film that is frightening rather than the specific creature or the specific monster. Besides, I think children can relate to creatures like that, which, if you like, are fantasy rather than reality. They can relate to a shark, and therefore the shark will bring them no nightmares, okay? Not like the hidden murderer or the hatchet killer or whatever, who I think is a reality, is a possibility, and therefore that can bring about nightmares, I think the idea of relating to an animal, which really is what we're talking about, is frightening when you're viewing it, but it doesn't leave nightmares.
I've never played a a heroine, you know, and so I didn't play her that way. I mean, I didn't mean to, you know, I didn't get out my heroine book and go through it or anything. I had a different idea of what would happen. But once I started to do it, it's hard for an actor because it's a very technical film and the relationships are not the focus of the movie. The relationships have to be understood and they have to be played, but through the action of the film. That was very challenging. I really had so much to do to think about that I didn't think about, you know, about my options. And I felt very at home in the character, who I think is very different from me.
And I was afraid that he was going too far when we were shooting it with some of the things. I mean, I know some of the things he was doing there that he did shot that are not in the picture. The only concern I had about it ultimately was whether it was too intense. I guess not, but it comes awfully close to being too intense for an audience to sit through.
So we set out to do a thriller, and at a month, 2 months, 6 weeks ago, the film was running at about 2 hours and 11 minutes. The film now runs at an hour 57, 58. And I think when it was 11 minutes longer, it was what I would have called too relentless and didn't let anybody off the hook. There are certain elements in there now, I think, that do let a little bit of air into it and allow you to relax occasionally, which I think is terribly important.
I mean, I had to do this design, and I like to do this design, and I like the story, so I think if you do a monster movie, it can't be strong enough.
I felt the picture was awesome, and I have no objectivity about my performance. I thought everyone came off so well. I felt there were 7 people there, all very different, that you cared about.
But you see, I took the 11-year-old when he was 8 to see Jaws, and at one stage I put my hand over his eyes and I thought, oh my God, you know, I shouldn't have brought him. And he prized my fingers off and said, what are you doing, you know? He said, so he's just lost his arm, you know, and that was and he took it in good faith as a piece of entertainment. You know, they know it's a film.